Buddhism does not protect you from death. It never did, and the practice the Buddha actually prescribed, the one most Western Buddhists have never even heard of, is so unsettling that a man once stood up and walked out of a meditation hall. Just hearing it described, you have probably been told that spiritual practice brings peace about dying, that Buddhism in particular offers some kind of calm acceptance, a way to face the end without fear. The Buddha said the opposite. He said, "You are not thinking about death enough," and that your refusal to look at it, really look at it, is quietly running your entire life. Picture this. You are sitting in a room with someone you love. They are dying. You can see it. The skin has changed. The breathing has changed. And you are doing what most people do. You are holding their hand and saying, "It is going to be okay." You are checking your phone when they close their eyes. You are looking at the clock and thinking about parking. You are doing everything except the one thing that might actually matter, which is sitting with the full, unbearable weight of what is happening. This person is leaving, and one day, not as far from now as you think, someone will be sitting in a chair, just like that one, watching you 2,500 years. Before that hospital room, a man in northern India gathered a group of monks in a grove and gave them a test. It was not about meditation technique. It was not about enlightenment. It was about death. He asked each of them a simple question. How often do you think about dying? The first monk said he contemplated death once a day. That sounds reasonable. The second said he thought about it with every meal. Even better. A third said he reflected on death every 4 mouthfuls of food. That is almost obsessive. The Buddha listened to all of them, and then he said something nobody expected. He called them heedless. Every single one. The only monk who passed the test was the one who said, "I contemplate death with every single breath." Not once a day, not once a meal, every breath. And the reason those monks failed is the same reason you are failing right now without knowing it. We will come back to that. That test comes from a sutta in the Pali Canon, the Anguttara Nikaya, Chapter 6, Discourse 19. It is one of only 2 places in the earliest Buddhist texts where the Buddha defines this practice by name. He called it maraṇasati. Say it like maraṇasati. And it means mindfulness of death. Not acceptance of death. Not peace with death, mindfulness. The same bare, unflinching attention you are supposed to bring to your breath in meditation, the Buddha said, bring that to the fact that you are going to die. Today, possibly in the next hour, possibly before you finish this sentence. Now, here is what makes the monk story so strange. These were not casual practitioners. These were men who had left their families, shaved their heads, given up every possession, and spent years in the forest training their minds. One of them was contemplating death every 4 mouthfuls of food. That is a level of dedication most people cannot imagine. And the Buddha looked at him and said, "You are living carelessly." You can feel the silence in that grove. You can see the monks glancing at one another because the standard the Buddha set was not difficult. It was impossible, by any normal measure, Every breath not as a metaphor. As a literal instruction, you breathe in, and somewhere in the back of your awareness is the recognition. This could be the last one. The practice did not stop there. The Buddha also gave his followers 5 lines to sit with every single day. They are called the 5 remembrances, and they come from the Upajjhatthana Sutta. They go like this. I am subject to aging. There is no way to escape aging. I am subject to illness. There is no way to escape illness. I am subject to death. There is no way to escape death. Everything I hold dear and everyone I love are subject to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. That is not a prayer. There is nothing to believe. There is no deity listening. It is a mirror, and the instruction is not to recite it like a mantra. The instruction is to sit with each line until you can feel it in your body. Not understand it in your head. Feel it in your gut. Most people can say, I am going to die someday, without flinching. The practice asks you to close the gap between knowing and feeling until the words land like a fist. You know this avoidance. You have been in the room when someone dies, and your first instinct was to start planning. The calls, the arrangements, the flowers, because planning feels safer than feeling. You have said they are in a better place, not because you believe it, but because the silence after death felt unbearable, and you needed to fill it with something. You have scrolled past a news story about someone your age dying and felt a cold flash in your chest, and then kept scrolling. That flash was maraṇasati trying to get your attention, and you shut it down in under a second. Here is the strange part. In 1973, an anthropologist named Ernest Becker published a book called The Denial of Death. It won the Pulitzer Prize. Becker argued that nearly everything humans build, culture, religion status, legacy, the desperate need to be remembered, is an elaborate defense system against one fact: you are going to die, and there is nothing you can do about it. Psychologists took Becker's thesis and turned it into a research program. They called it terror management theory. Over 500 experiments later, the data says the same thing. The Buddha said 25 centuries earlier, when you suppress your awareness of death, it does not go away. It drives you. We will come back to that research. But for now, just know that what the Buddha saw without a brain scanner, modern psychology is confirming with hundreds of them. So that is what the Buddha prescribed. Not comfort, not an afterlife, not reassurance. A daily unflinching confrontation with the fact that you are going to die. Practiced with every breath you take. Now let us look at why it works. Because the answer is not what you expect. The part I am about to show you is the reason this practice actually reduces fear instead of increasing it. If you leave now, you will know the prescription, but not why it works. And without that, maraṇasati sounds like torture instead of freedom. Most Buddhism videos will never get to what comes next. If this is landing for you, subscribe. This channel breaks down what the Buddha actually taught. Not the greeting card version, not the meditation app version. The real thing. And drop a comment if something in this video has already shifted the way you are thinking. I read every one. Here is what most people miss. The reason staring at death works is not spiritual. It is mechanical. When you avoid thinking about death, the fear does not disappear. It goes underground, and from underground, it runs you. This is not just ancient intuition. This is what 500 experiments in terror management theory have demonstrated since the 1980s. Psychologists Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pischinski spent decades proving something the Buddha could have told them in a sentence. When you suppress your awareness of death, when you push it out of conscious thought, it leaks out sideways. You become more materialistic, more nationalistic, more aggressive toward anyone who threatens your worldview, more desperate to matter, to be remembered, to build something that will outlast you. Not because you are greedy or small, because you are terrified and you do not even know it. But here is where it gets stranger. The same research shows that when death awareness is brought into conscious processing, when you face it deliberately, when you sit with it instead of running from it, something different happens. The defensiveness drops. The anxiety decreases. People report more meaning in their lives, more clarity about what actually matters, and less attachment to the things that do not. Think about the last time you scrolled your phone at 2 in the morning. You were not bored. You were running. The noise, the content, the endless feed. That is the modern version of what the Buddha called heedlessness. The Pali word is appamada. Say it like apamashta, and it means the opposite. Non-heedlessness, diligence, urgency. The refusal to let a single moment pass without recognizing that it could be your last. That word, appamada, would become the final word the Buddha ever spoke. We are almost there. Here is the part nobody tells you. The Buddha did not just ask his followers to think about death. He asked them to sit with it, literally. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the most important meditation manual in the Pali Canon, there is a section called the 9 Cemetery Contemplations. The practice is this: you go to a charnel ground, a place where bodies are left to decompose in the open, and you watch a body bloat. You watch it turn blue. You watch the skin split, and the insects come. You watch it become a skeleton, and then bones, and then dust. And at each stage, you say one thing to yourself: this body is subject to the same fate. There is no to escape it. This is not metaphor. This was standard monastic practice. Theravada monasteries in Southeast Asia still display human skeletons in their meditation halls. For exactly this reason, the Buddha understood something that exposure therapy would not formally describe for another 2,500 years. That the only way through fear is through it. Not around it, not above it through. This sounds extreme, but you already do a version of this without realizing it. You have looked at old photographs of yourself, maybe from 10 years ago, maybe 20, and something shifted inside you. A quiet vertigo. That person in the photo had your name and your face, but they are gone. The things they worried about are gone. The body they lived in has been replaced cell by cell. What you felt in that moment that flicker of where did that person go, is maraṇasati trying to reach you. The practice is that flicker, sustained, held, not pushed away after half a second. That is the mechanism. The Buddha did not offer you comfort about death. He offered you exposure. And now let us see what it looked like when the Buddha himself faced his own. He was 80 years old. His body was failing. He had eaten a meal offered by a blacksmith named Kunda. And shortly after, severe illness struck. Bloody dysentery, pain so intense that the texts say he bore it mindfully. Free from mental suffering, he told Ananda, his closest companion, the man who had walked beside him for 25 years, not to blame Kunda. The meal was not the cause. The body was simply done. They carried him to a small town called Kusinara, to a grove of sal trees on the bank of a river. He asked Ananda to prepare a bed for him between two of the largest trees with his head to the north. Then he lay down on his right side, one foot resting on the other, the same posture he had taught his monks for meditation, the same posture he had used the night he became enlightened 45 years earlier. The twin sal trees bloomed out of season. Flowers fell from the branches and covered his body. What happens next is the part that makes the entire teaching actually useful in your life. Starting tonight, monks came from everywhere, villagers, and standing behind the Buddha, fanning him in the fading light, was Ananda, the man who had memorized more of the Buddha's words than anyone alive, the man who had been there for almost every teaching, every journey, every meal. And Ananda began to cry. He did not cry quietly. The texts say he went to his lodging, leaned against the doorframe, and wept. He said, "I am still a learner. I have not yet reached the goal. And now my teacher is passing away, the one who was so compassionate to me." The Buddha noticed he was gone. He asked the monks to bring Ananda back, and when Ananda stood before him, eyes swollen, the Buddha said something that sounds gentle, but cuts like a blade. "Ananda, do not cry. Have I not already taught you that all things that are pleasant and delightful are impermanent and subject to separation? Pay attention to this." He did not say, "It will be all right." He did not say, "We will meet again." He did not promise Ananda a better place, a next life, a reunion. He pointed Ananda back to the teaching. The same teaching, impermanence anicca, anicca. Everything that arises passes away, including me, including you, including the grief you are feeling right now. That is the open loop from the beginning. The monks in the grove failed the test because they treated death as an event that would happen someday, tomorrow, next week, at the end of a meal. Ananda failed the same test. He had heard every teaching. He had memorized them with perfect recall. But when death actually arrived, when it was his teacher, his friend, lying on the ground between flowering trees, the teaching collapsed into theory, and the feeling overwhelmed him. He knew impermanence, he had not felt it. And that gap between knowing and feeling is the gap you are living in right now. It is the gap maraṇasati is designed to close. Here is the research that confirms it. A 2022 randomized controlled trial found that just 6 weeks of brief daily mindfulness practice, the kind of deliberate death, awareness the Buddha prescribed, significantly reduced fear of death compared to a control group. Terror management theory predicted exactly this. When death awareness moves from suppressed to conscious, the fear loses its grip. Not because you stop being afraid, but because you stop running. And when you stop running, something remarkable happens. The fear turns into clarity, the same clarity the Buddha demonstrated in that sal grove. Answering questions, teaching one last student, correcting his oldest friend. While his body was shutting down around him, his last words were not be at peace. They were not let go. They were not, I love you. He said, all compounded things are subject to disintegration. Strive diligently. Strive, that word in Pali is appamada, the same word from before. Urgency, non-heedlessness. The last thing the Buddha said on this earth was not a comfort. It was a command. Do not waste the time you have left. So, here is what the Buddha actually taught about death. 3 things to take with you. First, the Buddha did not teach comfort about death. He taught maraṇasati, deliberate, daily death contemplation, practiced not once a day, not once a meal, but with every breath. He tested his own monks on this. Most of them failed. The standard was not reasonable. It was relentless. And it was relentless on purpose. Because anything less, he said, was living carelessly. Second, you do not need a monastery or a charnel ground to practice this. You need 5 minutes and 5 lines, the 5 remembrances. I am subject to aging. I am subject to illness. I am subject to death. Everything I love will change. My actions are my only true belongings. Sit with those words tonight, not as something you read, but as something you let land in your chest. The practice is not about understanding that you will die. You already understand that. The practice is about feeling it. And then, this is the part most people never reach, noticing what changes when you do. What falls away? What suddenly matters? What stops mattering entirely? Third, the Buddha's last word was appamada. Urgency. He did not die, telling his followers to relax. He died telling them to hurry, because once you truly understand that this breath could be your last, not as a concept, not as a poster on a wall, but as something you can feel in your bones, you stop wasting the ones you have. You stop filling your days with noise that exists only to keep you from hearing the silence underneath. You stop saying someday about the things that matter. The Buddha did not promise you protection from death. He promised you something better. The ability to stop running from it. When was the last time you sat with the fact that you are going to die, not as an idea, but as something you could feel in your body? Tell me in the comments. I am not asking to be clever. I am asking because the Buddha said that most people go their entire lives without doing it once. And if this video made you do it, even for a second, then something just shifted that most people never let shift. If this changed something for you, subscribe. There is more coming, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Not someone who is dying, but someone who has forgotten that they are